Why is Beijing the capital of China? Starting from the Forbidden City, China's 5,000-year-old civilization has left behind numerous ancient buildings, and the Forbidden City is one of the most famous among them. It was built during the Ming Dynasty and underwent development during the Ming and Qing dynasties, eventually forming the magnificent complex we see today. Today, the Forbidden City welcomes a large number of tourists daily. During festivals and holidays, it becomes the most visited tourist attraction, indicating the love people have for it. But did you know? When Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Ming Dynasty, Beijing was not the capital, and the construction of the Forbidden City was a massive undertaking. Building such a grand palace in a city that wasn't the capital can be considered a deviation from the norm. So, what prompted the emperor to decide to build the Forbidden City in Beijing? It all boiled down to power struggles and usurpation. During the previous dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, Beijing was the capital known as Dadu. However, the rulers of the Yuan dynasty lacked stability and had no intention of constructing a grand palace to confine themselves within. Therefore, although Beijing was prosperous during the Yuan dynasty, there were no large palaces. Later, there was widespread dissatisfaction among the people with Mongol rule, leading to numerous uprisings. Among them, Zhu Yuanzhang gained historical prominence, rising from being a beggar to becoming the emperor of the Ming Dynasty. Zhu Yuanzhang had a particularly famous advisor named Liu Bowen, who urged Zhu Yuanzhang to pass the throne to his capable fourth son, Zhu Di. He hinted to the emperor that if Zhu Di ascended the throne, the country would prosper, and indeed, the era of the Yongle reign emerged as Liu Bowen predicted. However, Zhu Yuanzhang was deeply grieved by the death of his eldest son, Zhu Biao, and without hesitation, he appointed Zhu Biao's son, his grandson Zhu Yunwen, as the crown prince. This left Liu Bowen silently sighing. In his astronomical works, Liu Bowen planned the layout of Beijing, including the positioning of the Forbidden City. Perhaps Liu Bowen had foreseen the disaster of usurpation, but couldn't reveal it, for the heavens' secrets must not be disclosed. Since Zhu Yunwen became the crown prince, to prevent his uncles from coveting his power, Zhu Yuanzhang began to grant fiefs, giving each of his sons a piece of land and sending them far away. That's how Zhu Di came to Beijing. However, he wasn't happy because he felt that Zhu Yunwen was too scholarly and refined. Being a scholar was one thing, but being emperor and ruling the country was another matter entirely, which Zhu Di found laughable. So, he joined forces with his trusted allies and launched the famous Jingmen campaign in the year 1399. 3 years later, Zhu Di successfully captured the capital of Nanjing, becoming the emperor, while Zhu Yunwen's whereabouts remained unknown. Zhu Di didn't like Nanjing because Zhu Yunwen's loyalists were all there, and he feared making too many enemies in the south. Moreover, the Mongols in the north kept harassing the Central Plains. So establishing the capital in Beijing could better deal with external threats, giving it an advantage over Nanjing. However, moving the capital wasn't so easy. Many ministers, upon hearing of the capital relocation, kneeled and pleaded with Zhu Di to reconsider. Unable to convince them, Zhu Di had to resort to a combination of benevolence and coercion, reasoning with the ministers extensively, but to no avail. Finally, he remembered Liu Bowen's prophecy and invoked the same arguments Liu Bowen had used, telling the courtiers that going against the will of heaven was futile and that the capital relocation was divinely ordained, so they shouldn't obstruct it. Because Liu Bowen was well versed in astronomy and geography and had a knack for divination, the ministers had nothing to say against it and had to go along with the emperor's wishes. Zhu Di couldn't help but feel amused in his heart. He couldn't just say that he wanted to move the capital to Beijing because all his confidants were there. In fact, from the moment Zhu Di ascended the throne, he had plans to move the capital. And the primary task of the capital relocation was to construct a grand and imposing imperial palace. In the year 1406, the construction of the Forbidden City began. Zhu Di appointed Yao Guangxiu, the teacher of the crown prince, as the architect of the Forbidden City. After careful consideration, Yao Guangxiu transformed the appearance of Beijing from resembling the Naja stepping on the fire wheels into a square city, with the Forbidden City at its center. In the year 1421, the Forbidden City was finally mostly completed. Zhu Di was very pleased and, along with the royal family and couriers, proudly headed north and moved into the long-awaited new palace. Until Zhu Di's death, the Forbidden City remained the imperial palace of the Ming Dynasty. Interestingly, Zhu Di's son, Emperor Ming didn't like Beijing because he had been acting as regent in Nanjing for a long time. When Renzong ascended the throne, he immediately issued an edict to move the capital back to Nanjing. Little did he know, Renzong's reign was short-lived, and he passed away after ruling for less than a year. The subsequent emperor Ming Xuanzong was a ruler who liked Beijing. Since then, Beijing has remained the capital of China, and the status of the Forbidden City has never been shaken.